Alright, I think we may have unraveled the mystery in The Witcher 3, of which I talked about in my last video. You can have a look at it if you haven't watched it yet, but basically it revolves around several peculiar things we can find during wintertime in White Orchard. That is, of course, during the ending where Ciri becomes an Empress. So, one of the people involved in the creation of Brothers in Arms, you know, the mod that restores and fixes a whole bunch of content, had something very interesting to share on the matter. His name is Glassfish, and apparently, the Winter White Orchard was originally designed to be an alternative prologue of The Witcher 3. As in, the whole section at the start of the game could have been different based on your choices in The Witcher 2. Most likely based on which path you took, Roach versus Yorveth, and maybe some other crucial choices within these two paths. But allegedly, in order to make the game more accessible to new players, CDPR decided to scrap that idea. It may have also been related to the fact that they decided to cut Yorveth from the game entirely, though I'm not sure which decision came first. Additionally, if you remember the viewer who helped me with some of these details in my last video, Doboshing, he actually came through with a few more interesting screenshots. You know how I showed you that you fall through the ground when you approach these strange objects? Well, that's true, but by teleporting to his free camera's location, he was able to find a few safe spots on which he could stand without sinking through the ground. And by having Geralt in the area, he was able to force the game to load nearby NPCs, and he saw a bunch of people praying in line in front of the chapel, as well as actual harpies around these nests. So, with all that, and the stuff we mentioned in the previous video in mind, I think the mystery is beginning to unravel. And it seems that the Empress ending in The Witcher 3 is actually made from a smaller, repurposed segment of a larger alternative version of the entire zone, which never made it into the game. All these strange things we find outside the boundaries of the Empress ending, you know, the harpy invasion, the peculiar dead bodies we can investigate, the demonic cult, whatever it's supposed to be happening around the crypt, the inactive place of power with the floating stones you can follow, all these were likely legitimate locations you could explore and quests you could complete depending on your choices in The Witcher 2.
I'm looking for a whore.
Questions, of course, still remain. We don't know why the places of power are missing. Perhaps it's something they implemented after the zone was cancelled, and perhaps they positioned the current places of power precisely at what used to be places of interest in the Winter Zone. Another connection I speculated about, the one between the demonic cultists and the Devil's Pit, may still be relevant. It's just that instead of the cult being an aftermath of the deleted events in Velen, it may have been a prelude to it. It probably even makes more sense that way, so that it doesn't distract us away from the actual ending. In fact, if we think about it, we already have a similar case currently in The Witcher 3. You know the story of Lena and her lover? It begins in White Orchard, but it culminates later in Velen. So perhaps this was a kind of alternative to that. Of course, a major question of timeline remains. If the Winter White Orchard was supposed to be an intro of the game, how does it tie to the main section? Given that The Witcher 3 takes place in summer? Well, technically several months before the ending where it's clearly winter. So did the alternative intro happen before Nilfgaard took White Orchard? Or did the story adjust based on your choices in the previous game? I'm actually leaning towards the latter because the same gentleman from Brothers in Arms came up with another intriguing fact, this time an unused and somewhat incomplete piece of dialogue, but one that was apparently supposed to be part of this alternative prologue. It's with none other than the Emperor himself, and it takes place in Vizima when meeting him for the first time. So essentially at the end of the prologue. There's no cutscene to be restored here, just the audio. And so it's difficult to tell exactly what is supposed to be going on. I assume you stumble upon a conversation between Emhyr, one of his officers, and the local Temerian gardener. Also, the beginning is a little awkward because there are a few lines missing. But here it is.
Pardon, my lord. I was sure I wouldn't... Yes, Emhyr var Emrys, Emperor of Nilfgaard. The white flame dancing on the graves of his foes. I was, aye. Do you really do it? Dance on your enemies' graves?
No one's ever asked me that. Gara care es mayot care.
Ayes ad kert. Nevelium am ked.
Have mercy, my lord. Merely looking after the tree. Thought no one would...
Silence, Temerian. Don't speak until spoken to.
Axe.
Yes, your Imperial Majesty.
This is Temeria no more. Not the garden, not the palace, not the country. It's Nilfgaard now.
Aye, Nilfgaard, so be it. Been caring for the tree since the days of Medell, Foltest's father.
You know how Foltest died.
Murdered in Lavalette Castle.
Where was your royal guard at the time?
King was alone. They say the assassin caught him in the solar.
Solitude, yeah. It can be a deadly trap when one is not attentive.
That is all we have, but as you can see, or as you can hear, it's clearly tied heavily to events in The Witcher 2. And I think it supports the hypothesis that it was probably removed to make the game more streamlined and accessible to those who haven't played the previous one. Which, if true, is a terrible reason to remove it. Also, by the heavy Temerian theme of this dialogue, I would assume that it was supposed to play after taking Roach's path. I was about to say that maybe this means they made Yorveth's path canon.
My favorite type of magic.
But then again, they removed Yorveth himself from the game, so I don't know. Tell me what you make of all of this. And since we mentioned the Catriona Plague in the previous video, and the removed story from the Devil's Pit, once again, thanks to the people from Brothers in Arms, there appear to be a couple of leftover pieces of ambient dialogue that were supposed to play in the original version of the Devil's Pit. I've talked more about it in this video, if you haven't watched it, but yeah, basically it seems that that's all we have from the original concept.
What good was it? This whole voyage?
The Black Ones might take mercy. You gotta keep hoping.
No hope left. Instead of dying at home, I'll die at Nilfgaard's doorstep, like a stray dog. We've no hope left. Birds, be gone from here.
You've any strange left?
Still kicking.
Then come help. We've got bodies to bury.
Master! Don't let me die here!
It's nice that the next generation finally utilized the place, but it's also a shame that we never got to see what the original plan was. So that's all I had for now. Let me know what you think of everything I've talked about. I'd be curious to hear any more theories or ideas, and if not, well, I thank you for watching anyway. Special thanks to my supporters and YouTube members, and until the next video, stay tuned and be good.